Hey guys, just wanted to show an update on the crossbow Titan and where it's at. Um, Start a map with the boss, and then I'll go into some of the details later. Alright, so on the boss, I did forget to apply my curse, so that would have been quite a big damage jump. Um, but yeah, the gist of it is a heavy stun crossbow titan, taking advantage of this 50% effective small passives, and then crushing blows so I can inflict crushing blows easier even though I'm doing fire damage, and then a bonus damage while mobs are heavy stunned. Um, so it is an avatar fire build to convert all the damage into fire, so that way I can take advantage of fire pin where I have access to it, and then also because of this node where heavy stuns inflict fire exposure, um, and then I can take advantage of 3 dragons, which allows my fire damage to contribute to shock chance, and then I can stack shock magnitude on gear and on passives, so that way I get around 70% shocks from fire damage because igniting doesn't really do a whole lot for the build, so utilizing shocks is a much better avenue for damage. And that's kind of the unique interaction with the the 3 dragons. The other interaction is taking advantage of heavy stuns and the small passive node. So for instance, like the small passive node bonus, these are boosted by 50%, so these will be 12% usually, now they're 18. And then since crossbows count as two-handed weapons, you can take advantage of some of these more generic nodes that have a stun threshold on them, or a stun build-up, and magnitude. And same thing here, and here. And then some of these nodes get pretty big area of effect and area damage since they're magnified by 50%. This one gives you lucky damage while enemies are stunned. This is purely movement speed. The evasion nodes become quite strong. This section here is taking advantage of a alone from the darkness, or against the darkness jewel, where these nodes are actually kind of not needed, but because of how efficient the clustering becomes, each one of these gives 4% physical damage as extra fire, and then the small nodes give 1% maximum life, so that's why I'm taking this cluster. This gives you maim on hit. Now this is all shock magnitude. I'm going in here for some attack speed and movement speed. And I think all the rare jewels are essentially just attack speed, shock magnitude, and then like a generic damage stat. Because I have so much negative attack speed or reduced attack speed from the tree, getting some on jewels helps it make, like turning your character, like this, actually takes attack speed for whatever reason. So even though shooting the crossbow doesn't require attack speed, turning your character to shoot requires attack speed. So some attack speed in the tree or from gear does make a difference to make up for the reduction. Yeah, that's the gist of the passive tree. Oh, it is Resolute Technique, simply because I'm not invested in crits at all. So just not having to deal with accuracy or distance at all, just like always hitting, is a no-brainer in my opinion. Yep. Okay, so we'll dive into the gems. So on Explosive Shot, I've chosen to use this skill because it has really high base attack damage. So at this level, it's level 32. It has 784 damage per shot. And the way Scatter Shot works with this gem is that it shoots almost like Barrage from PoE1. So without it, it shoots 1. And then if you were to put it Scatter Shot, it shoots 3 in a row. So the less attack speed and less damage multiplier is overcome or outdone by the additional projectiles because it acts as a essentially a 200% more multiplier because you're shooting twice in the same click. So even though not quite 200% after you account for the less damage, but it is a incredibly efficient damage gem. The other big damage gem is Primal Armament, and then for single target, I've been using Conk Effect just for another damage support. Overpower for 50% more stun buildup. And then lastly, Auto Reload. So anytime I heavy stun an enemy, I get to reload my bolts for free. So during clear, On crossbows, what slows you down while you're running is the actual reloading and not the shooting. So because I auto reload, the ability never has to slow down during moving, so that makes clearing breaches and other things like that incredibly efficient and feels really fun to play. Also, the way that build up or works on bosses is generally speaking, in map bosses or rares, most rares die before I have to reload, but if they don't, I generally have them heavy stunned. So then this would auto reload while I'm firing at them, so I don't have to wait on it. And then if it doesn't for some reason kill them in the first 6 shots, then you can hit instant reload or emergency reload, which immediately reloads the bolts with a big damage multiplier. Um, so on the skill gem itself, it gives you a 30% more damage buff for the bolts that you reload it. And then there's a couple supports in here. This one gives you 15% more. So the reloaded bolts have a 45% damage multiplier on them. And the rest of the gems are just to have CDR, and then any bolts in the 3 that I have reloaded get Calling Strike applied to them. For clearing, I'm using Herald of Thunder as well, because the way this gem works is the buff basically allows your next hit that when you've killed the shocked enemy, you shoot bolts at the next target that you attack. And since these are AoE bolts, they have, when the bolt strikes down, they have an AoE tag on them. Since I have so much area of effect in the tree, the bolts actually become quite large and they do quite a bit of damage. So this is purely for clear. So has more area of effective attack on them, more damage. I don't really care about inflicting ailments with this, so this is a free damage link. This is extra fire damage since all of my damage is fire. The downside of this gem is negate it. And then this helps a little bit with retaining the energy shield. When killing blow, just 4% of 800 isn't a lot, but there's not much else to do with it. I've chosen not to level it up because it really is just for clear, and then Dex is actually a issue currently, so I can't level it up too much more. But it does its job for what it's there. It's just to kill white trash that's on the outside of the explosive shot. So if an enemy were to be out here and it got killed by Hail of Thunder, then it would extend the clear out to about here from the bolt radius. So it does add a little bit of AoE to the perimeters, but it doesn't always choose the nice mob on the outside. Sometimes it hits the mobs on the inside. But either way, it's extra clear. On Artillery Ballista, this is purely for utility. It just has increased placement speed. The fifth link would be Inspiration, more than likely, just to keep the cost down. Font of Rage and Font of Blood for regen, and then build up Rage. So pre-buffing a boss, especially ones that have like a long build-up time, this builds up Rage. Rage gives you 1% more attack damage per Rage. Um, it's okay. It's free, but you run out of the radius pretty fast, and your Rage drains pretty quickly. So in an ideal world, you would somehow maintain your area around it, but yeah, it's okay. It's nothing too special. It's just kind of there. Flammability, because I'm a pure fire build. Cast speed, heightened curse, persistence so the curse stays on longer. Fifth link would probably be the curse activation delay to reduce how long it takes, because when you cast it, sometimes you miss the mob because they're not in there. That covers all the active abilities, I believe. So Overwhelming Presence I'm using purely because it lowers the stun threshold and the ailment threshold, so mobs are easier to stun. And then Shock. Wind Dancer, because I am an evasion build, because life builds suck, and armor in particular sucks even more. You shoehorn whatever defense you can, and since going CI is not possible in this tree, evasion is the next best thing. And Wind Dancer is an easy gem to link for more evasion, and specifically because you're a range build, you don't get hit by melee attacks all that often. So it adds to quite a bit of extra evasion, almost 80% more when 4 stages up, which are almost always up. And then in here, I have Expanse because the cooldown doesn't really matter because I usually don't get hit that often. But when it does go off, it has a period big AoE Nova uh, that knocks back enemies. So this is basically just to get things off me if they're too close. When it goes off, outside of that, there's not much to link. You could link Blind or Maim to it, but I already get Blind and Maim from my tree, so that doesn't really offer much. Ghost Dance. So when I get hit, I recoup 5% of my energy shield as evasion. Um, have fast forward to it so these build up stacks faster. My evasion rating is about 9,000, so 5% of that should be about 450. So about half my pool. So it does add a little bit of buffer. It just kind of counted as 400 life, more or less. And then Infernal Cry is just supported by Dazing Cry. Nothing really super fancy here. It's really just this one. Uh, some extra rage for what it's worth. This is good to use on like big bosses because it's actually worth your time to get it off, but on a map boss it's pretty irrelevant. Um, yeah, it adds daze, which daze has the mob takes more stun build up, which means they're easier to stun. Okay, so that should cover all of that. Um, what would be next? So the gear, um, 3 dragons is the mandatory piece. If you can somehow figure out how to shoehorn energy shield into this build, I suspect it would be better just because of the current balance of things. But yeah, it's evasion ES, the utilize Ghost Shroud and Wind Dancer. The crossbow is pretty bad. I think it's like 500 combined DPS. It kind of has to be this base because the load additional bolt is so important because of the mechanic of auto reloading and the skill having one bolt by default. Ideally, the ideal crossbow would be this base with 2 additional bolts, attack speed, level projectile skills, and then an actual nice physical damage roll on it. This could go up to about 500 with a tier 1 roll, so it's missing quite a bit of damage, and there's just nothing on the market, I assume, because no one is utilizing this base because it's pretty niche and specific to this, and then um, crafting the additional bolt doesn't really have a tag, and it's pretty rare, so it's basically just the luck of the draw if you ID one with it or exalt slam it, but there's no like nice essence trick to craft it. Um, the gloves are just attack speed, life, some stats to help fill out stats for gear or gems, and then attack speed. Socket of the Chaos Res because I was short on gear. Ingenuity because I had it from the last build I played. Don't have to have this belt. It's not doing anything particularly remarkable besides making the mediocre rings I have better. Boots, life, movement speed, rarity, and then res. Nothing too special here. Amulet, you really want projectile skills, life, and I chose to go with trying to jack up the ES because it's still more efficient than even trying to jack up life on a bottom side of the tree build. If you're not catching the undertones, life really fucking sucks compared to energy shield. The fact that I would even consider maximum energy shield and flat energy shield over percent max life on a life build in the bottom left of the tree is a testament to how bad life is currently. Um, it is just way too weak in comparison, or maybe energy shield is way too strong. And this is the way the game's supposed to be. I don't know, but energy shield is significantly better. And then the rings, basically just stat filling, evasion, and a damage roll in life would be the nice prefixes. The evasion's even questionable. It might just be better to get like fizz, fire, life, and then rarity, res on the suffixes, or strength or attributes. You know, kind of just the important part is life and damage, and then rarity, and the rest can be reses. I don't think there's much else to cover. Currently, the build has done everything minus tier 4 breach, and I have our tier 4 breach boss. I have not tried a simulacrum on the breach boss. That thing is near impossible to stun. I can do it, but the fight turns into a 5 to 6 to 7 minute fight. Um, and frankly, it's not very fun because the whole iteration of the character is to stun things. But that boss is like basically after 5 minutes I might have stunned him once. Um, I Yeah, it's just not good for the build. But for mapping, it's awesome, especially breaches and big open areas. It clears a lot of mobs, so you get a lot of value out of breaches. Ritual, it's pretty hilarious because you can essentially just sit on one side and hit the whole arena. Delirium is no big deal. Uh, corruption or beyond mobs are easy. If I had feedback for GGG to do something to this, it'd be add a notable over here to make your like other damage types like be able to have 50% more stun buildup instead of physical. That would encourage more build diversity, I believe, because phys damage stuns mobs easier, but then there's nodes like this, which are around fire damage stunning mobs. Um, but yeah, and then some fixing life and defense or adding something to make armor more interesting of a choice. These are I would never take this ever. Um, I would also never take this ever. Um, so those are like the defensive keystones down on the bottom side of the tree, and they're complete dog shit in the current iteration. Yeah, I would recommend the build. It is fun to play. Just keep in mind that on the very top end, like the top 5% of content you can do, it's essentially limited by gear, and it's mostly the crossbow. In theory, a crossbow could go up to like 1,000 fizz DPS or 1,000 combined DPS with 2 additional bolts. So the bow could be literally twice as good. But yeah, it's just limited by what the market has as supply. But yeah, fun build. It feels really good to clear. I played it since level 1 of the crossbows. I don't know if I'd recommend that. I'd probably wait, play as something else until you get the explosive shot, which I think is 32, so roughly mid Act 2, and then you can really start leaning into the crossbow build. But yeah, hope you guys enjoy. Catch ya.